Insights of All Trades podcast.
My biggest recommendation for someone that's struggling with their weight is to cut out all processed foods and sugar. If you do that's all you need to do. If you cut out those two things, you will. You can eat almost anything else you want, and you probably won't gain weight.
I've been going hard on demonizing sugar, and it
So
has made my
bad.
friends not happy with me when I've been bringing it up. But this was actually, I know you gave a shout out to Ben Pekulski earlier. I was listening to one of his podcasts. I believe it was with Dr. Benjamin Bickman. I hope I'm giving the right person credit for this, but I believe his PhD, not sure about MD. Either way, brilliant guy, and he was talking about all of the negative implications of insulin resistance, meaning like type 2 diabetes, or even if you wouldn't be clinically diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic yet. The point is that if you don't mind me just giving like an overview of what
I think I know where you're going with this, but go ahead.
The pathophys is, so in case it doesn't make sense to anyone and you're curious about knowing, I think the easiest way to word it is, if you think about your gastrointestinal tract, your stomach's breaking down the food, and your small intestines is where the majority of the absorption, at least for your nutrients, is happening. And for water, you have a lot in both your small and large intestines. So with something like an apple or a fruit, if you take, I don't know exactly how many grams of sugar would be in an apple, but take that and take whatever the equivalent is in something that's soda. You take the exact same amount of grams of sugar, and if you eat them, eat the apple and you check your blood glucose levels, and another day you drink the same exact amount of sugar in a soda, you are going to have a much larger blood glucose spike from like that fruit juice or that soda, because it's not quite this simple, but an easy way to grasp it is, think of like a lot of the fiber in your fruits and vegetables. It takes a while for that to be broken down in your stomach, and then your digestive enzymes release mostly from your pancreas, go into your small intestine. It breaks down like what's holding together those sugars. So you break those complex carbohydrates down, and they slowly, over a period of time, get absorbed across your small intestines. Whereas if you like slam a soda with the exact same amount, it doesn't need to spend time in your stomach digesting. It doesn't need, like, if it's already in a simple sugar form, meaning that like it's glucose, glucose or fructose, which are just single sugars, not bound. It's like not a polysaccharide. It's not in a chain. So it doesn't need broken down by digestive enzymes. It's just going to fly across your small intestine. It's going to jack up your blood glucose. And the problem with the high blood glucose then that results is that, so more insulin gets released. What would the word be? Like in an equivalent ratio to, or like linearly related to the amount of blood glucose that is like that you have. Mm-hmm. So if you have a higher blood glucose, you have a higher insulin release. If you have a higher insulin release, your cells over time, if it keeps responding to insulin, the importance is that when your cells respond to insulin, they upregulate glucose transporters, so that way your cells can actually pull your glucose from the blood, or transport the glucose from the blood and use them. And then you get into actually using cellular energy systems. So we won't go into that, but the point is, if you're continuously stimulating those cells with insulin over time, like any other cellular stimulus, you're going to downregulate those receptors. So over time, the same amount of blood glucose spike isn't going to yield the same amount of glucose receptors. And it sounds, well, I shouldn't say simple, but it sounds like, okay, but like that's a great thing. Thanks for the history lesson on what your body's doing over time. But what the implications of that insulin resistance, incredible.
There's so much that goes
So
on because of that.
this is where, sorry everyone for taking a while to get that out. I hope it was comprehensible. What Dr. Ben Bickman was talking about, he was like talking about the negative implications of that. The one that stuck out to me the most was that insulin resistance was, to this date, the biggest predictor of Alzheimer's. And that's like even if you don't even start talking about all of the other negative implications of type 2 diabetes or anything that falls under the umbrella of insulin resistance, already what seems to be the fear of many people, including myself, is dementia and anything else that is related to the disease state of Alzheimer's. So that alone is something that sticks out to me of, boy, do I want to remain insulin susceptible and keep my cells responding to that stimulus by and far. But things like that, things like all the other problems with type 2 diabetes, like not being able to mobilize your fat reserves as well, and like in a good way to use like the fat you're storing for energy, like the peripheral blood flow problems, which is why you often hear about like a bunch of diabetics having amputations, because I want to riddle everyone with more pathophys, but you don't get blood flow as well to like the peripheral parts of your limbs. There's so much negative that goes into that, and even though you can be genetically predispositioned to like more or less insulin susceptibility in different ways, by and far you can control the amount of sugar you're putting in your system, especially when it's refined sugar.
And going off that real quick, the one of the other motivating factors for me is like, even if I don't achieve any of the goals that I want to achieve, so say I achieve nothing, which obviously is, but say I achieve nothing, at the absolute worst, my kids will have the best genetics that I could give them.
Yeah.
So if nothing else, I'm going to start them off as best as they could to achieve whatever they end up wanting to achieve.
That's
and in the
true.
same way, if you don't, this isn't to demonize anyone, this is just a fact. If you don't take care of your body and you don't, like, it's been proven that sperm is not as healthy whenever.
Yeah, I saw. I think Dr. Rhonda Patrick post that.
Yeah, and it really.
Yeah, and it was specifically through like sugar intake.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
it poses such a much bigger problem to your kids. Like they like if the starting block for your kid is at say necessarily a 0, having those implications, you basically start your kid out at a negative. You can start out at like a negative 10, negative 20, whatever. Whereas someone else could be starting their kid out at a positive 20. Like, why wouldn't you, even if you're not gonna have kids, but if you were, like, that's at least one motivating factor to put in there.
Yeah.
Even if you don't want to do it for yourself, like, who cares? Like, okay, don't do it for yourself. Do it for your kid. Like, it will literally make a difference. Like, it will make a difference.
Yeah, it is scary to me how like unknowledgeable I was, and by all means, don't know like. What are you looking for? Oh, your water. I was like, by all means, I not an expert in anything endocrinology, let alone everything that is tied to like diabetes and the epigenetics tied to that. But just from what I have tried to learn in the past couple years, it's scary to me, just like all the sugar that I ate on my own, like growing up, and it's like scary to me.
I don't think it's as big a deal as, like, I mean, it is definitely a huge deal, but like there's something different between having one spike in sugar that may not be good. So like if you say you eat one candy bar versus eating, say you wake up, you eat a 56-gram sugar energy drink, and then 3 hours later, you have some processed McDonald's or whatever, easy carbohydrate sugars there. And then 4 hours later for supper, you have like bag of potato chips and another thing of soda. And like, you're just constantly spiking that insulin all day long, so it never gets a chance to come down. And that's really what messes it up. Not necessarily having that one single spike isn't gonna mess. Like, don't think that we're saying that you're just by eating a candy bar you're gonna die. Get type 2 diabetes. But like, when you do it constantly, it's gonna it won't let your insulin come down.
Yeah.
And that's gonna pose a long-term problem.